right. Here we are,
All right.
episode 2.
Woo.
Episode 2. Pocket Developer. That's the working
Wow.
title.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pocket developer. That's a new thing.
So, or we could
You
say
know,
pocket developers, developers,
there's
developers,
developers.
developers.
Sometimes you have to get developers excited about what they're doing.
That is true.
Their craft.
That is true. And there's no better person to do that than
Steve Ballmer.
Steve B. So I think,
Yeah.
this is a show about the developers and the Windows mobile ecosystem. And there's kind of no better way for us to sort of get started. So why don't let's amp up. Let's amp it up. We're going to take it to the next level here.
Yeah.
So let's see how we do this.
Okay. So what is the $64,000?
He's already, you can tell he's already obviously
I'm gonna have to tough
got a
up
full
now.
head of
Here we
steam
go.
going here.
What's the $64,000 question for the field? What is the most asked question that I've received this week?
There
What
you
the
go.
hell are we supposed to do about .NET, Steve? It's a
Project
very good question, and it's got a
There you go.
very, very clear answer. Developers.
There you go.
The key to .NET, the key to industry transformation, the key to success is developers, 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 developers. Developers, 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 developers.
Eye of the Tiger.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Wow. That's
So
awesome.
now I am excited to talk
I'm
about
excited. Makes me feel great to be a developer, to have Steve Ballmer in my corner getting me pumped up, it is like Eye of the Tiger, most developers have a special alarm clock that's playing Eye of the Tiger, and then they project Steve Ballmer on the wall. He's like, developers, go get it.
Exactly.
.NET,
Exactly.
You're going to love it.
Yeah. So Steve was like, so everyone knows that YouTube clip. So that's pretty wild. But, I remember going to I think it was called MGX or something. It was some kind of sales conference they had annually, like my first year at Microsoft. Maybe it was 2005. And we had Windows Mobile 5 at the time. And it was down in Orlando or something.
Yeah,
and
that makes sense.
Big, basketball stadium or whatever it was. And he came out. Well, they do a whole day's long worth of pitches and things to the salespeople. And then he came out toward the end, and I thought, oh, okay. And I had been on the job like a couple of months, whatever. But, it's good to hear from Steve, whatever. No. Eye of the Tiger, drenched in water, screaming like for an hour.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is happening here? Like, this is insane. So that kind of thing, like for those that worked at Microsoft, that's pretty typical Steve. It
is typical Steve. And so you're right. And Steve is in his element, especially at an event like MGX, because Steve originally created the whole sales force.
Yeah, he was the head of sales. Right?
Yeah, he created it, which is arguably maybe the best sales force on the planet. You can get a meeting with anybody. And that MGX event, I've gone to a couple of those. And you know what it is? It's a yearly way to amp up sales guys.
It is, yeah.
Get them pumped.
It's a rah-rah. Yeah.
It is a rah-rah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And over the years, there was many products were introduced there. And I guess they still do it. I don't know. I only went to that one. I was in the product team, but I went to that. They sent me to, which was a good immersion for me.
Yeah.
I was like,
go see, what are those other people doing over in EPG? Yeah. What are those guys doing? Absolutely. No, it's exciting.
Yeah, but anyway, let's bring it back to developers. So today we're gonna do a couple things. We're gonna go down memory lane here on the gear again. Again, we're still in the Windows Mobile era here, episode 2. Kind of early 2000s. Really, the kind of when the phone form factor sort of got into it. The last time we had talked about more of the Pocket PC PDA form factor, early CE stuff. But now we get into the actual phone form factor. So
which
we'll
was
do that.
Elegantly genius. I think they worked on a focus group to come up with the name smartphone.
Smartphone.
Pocket PC phone edition or smartphone. Take your pick. I don't know. You want to with that with a stylus or without a stylus?
Yeah, well, that was
a D-pad or
the beginning of many self-inflicted wounds. But And then after that, we will jump over to our special guest. We actually have a panel of guests today that were sort of super key in the developer community back then. And we'll join them, and we'll talk about what it was like for the developer community then, and then we'll wrap it up. But this is going to be an exciting episode. Anyone who's been a developer, knows a developer, wants to be a developer, is a fan of Steve Ballmer and developers. This is probably the episode for you.
I mean, we've heard Steve Ballmer and Bill Gates say developers create the air we breathe at Microsoft. That's pretty powerful stuff.
Okay. Strong statement.
It is strong. Yeah. Let's look at some gear.
All right, let's do that. All right, here we go. So we are back with Ben and Matt from the Mobile Phone Museum here in episode 2. And we are really going to dig into this kind of next era beyond the origin story into the phone space, the specific phone space. And we're going to talk about some new platforms and a lot of interesting history. So without further ado, let me hand it over to Ben and Matt.
Thanks very much indeed, Pete. It's great to be back. And, Matt and I are super excited to be part of this and talk about the device in the Mobile Phone Museum. Those of you who aren't familiar with the Mobile Phone Museum, we're a not-for-profit set up by a number of industry individuals, most prominently myself and Matt. We have approximately 3,000 unique devices in our collection. Visit mobilephonemuseum.com to see all of those devices, and all of the devices that we're going to show you today are on that website. They're photographed and they're written up. But please, if any of you watching this have stories behind these devices, think that anything in our write-ups are inaccurate or incomplete, just reach out. We'd love to hear from you. That the whole purpose of the museum is to collect that amazing knowledge that's in people's heads that's going to get lost if someone doesn't capture it. But yeah, the advent of Stinger. What an exciting time. The first kind of phone form factor from Microsoft. Last time, you'll recall, we talked about the Pocket PC, products like the XDA, which was kind of the top of that story, this device here, which you may recall. But all of a sudden, there was this platform called Stinger, which, again, there are people who'll be watching this who'll be far more knowledgeable than me about that. But the first device I want to share with you today is the Microsoft Firefly from 1999, this object of beauty. And this is an extremely rare prototype. You can see even on the back, it has the Stinger sticker there and number 29. So that might give us some clue to how many of these. I have no idea what that number meant, but that clue to how many of these were. And this is the hardware that was used by Bill Gates at the Telecom 99 show, which was held every 4 years in Geneva in Switzerland, to demo the Stinger operating system when it was announced. So, and it was part of the keynote, there was actually a live demo, which was given by one of the Stinger development team, Ian Farrell. I don't know whether he's participating in this. Certainly, I know he'll be watching it. He'll be fascinated. And this device was manufactured in-house at Microsoft, with the design and build being done by another key person in the Microsoft mobile kind of story, who's absolutely key, which is a guy called Matt Taylor. This is an amazing device. If you go to our website, you can see a picture of Bill Gates and of Ian demoing this in 1999. And they learned apparently so much from this product. So one of the big challenges they had to overcome was power consumption. Microsoft was not used to the characteristics of the chips used in mobile phones. They were pushing them hard with the platform that they had. And I think this could have been a strong arm processor, which I think later the development team said, no way, Jose, we're not doing that. It uses far too much power. And apparently this device was so inefficient that it used almost as much power in idle mode as it did when it was active, because it was a very leaky kind of high-speed process. So, what a remarkable product.
That was amazing.
A true rarity. One of the ones.
Yeah.
By the way, just for people's context, we always like to remind folks, because it is 2024, that back then, so there was phones, they had these PDAs, but most people's phones kind of look like this.
There you go.
Yeah, this is like a Nokia 5190. They had tiny little screens on them. I know that's kind of hard to understand, but so when so part of there you go. So part of the motivation was how to take the Microsoft platform from the PDA form factor,
Squeeze
which was
it in there.
picking up some steam,
Yep.
into this kind of more pocketable single-handed form factor. And that's kind of what drove a lot of the Stinger strategy was, can we get a Microsoft smartphone platform into something more like this, which is kind of like what Ben's holding up. It actually ends up getting smaller than that too.
But the point was single-handed use. That was the key thing. With normal phones, you could use one hand.
Right. And they had the
Yeah.
9-key keypad.
Yeah, and if you wanted to use this, Pocket PC form factor, it was a two-hand job. This was not really a device you use with one hand. This then created that phone paradigm with a Microsoft operating system baked into it. So super important. So this is really the absolute, kind of genesis product for Microsoft smartphone products. But then a product which became more public in kind of the overall public domain was this device here, the Avenger. So we've gone from 1999 to 2001, and this was the device which was used in all of the kind of hype around the build up towards the launch of Stinger. Microsoft were talking publicly about Stinger, which went on to be called Microsoft Smartphone 2002, the official name of the operating system. And this device was given the name Avenger because the team thought it had quite a sexy design. And apparently Emma Peel was considered quite a sexy person at that time, but the name didn't quite work. So they went for Avenger. And apparently, and I do not know if this story is true, but I have been told that the back of this device here was actually modeled on the wife of a gentleman called Frank Bradshaw, who was a contractor working on the product. And his wife was laying on her stomach reading a book. And he thought the ergonomics and the curve looked so great that he sketched that out for the design of the plastics. And the blue color apparently was paint that came from a paint shop. And there was even a hole in the back, which was designed to work with belt clips that shipped with Microsoft GSM handsets at the time. So the team could walk around with these on their
you got to have every self-respecting geek back then had a belt clip of some sort.
Absolutely.
I think it's
on your belt.
It's so appropriate to call it Avenger because you were just talking about how our last episode we were doing the whole backstory, and I always think of the backstory of Iron Man, and then he went on to join the Avengers, and here we are today, and it probably looks more like Captain America, I guess, than.
So this was, as we mentioned before, this was great because you were into one-handed use. You didn't have that two-handed use of the kind of PDA. There was some question marks within Microsoft whether that was the right way to go. And it was tricky because this was a resistive touch screen as well. So it was very difficult to. Sorry, I get that completely wrong. At the time, phones were all using resistive touch screen, and this, capacitive touch screens didn't really exist then. So this wasn't touch screen. This was all interacted through the buttons on the device. So you had to be very, very clever in terms of the way that you designed it. And this used the Texas Instruments OMAP chip. And apparently, again, for the geeks out there, they moved from NOR flash to NAND flash, which was potentially a less expensive option. But it was very, very cleverly architected. And I don't know all the details of that. But the radio stack, lots of work done with TI. So, super, super important. Obviously, this had a full internet experience on it as well. So let's not forget, we were using kind of these rather limited versions of internet access through things like the wireless application protocol, the HDML protocol. This had Microsoft Mobile's Explorer micro browser, which could deliver both full HTML but also WML, the wireless markup language, which was a kind of subset of the internet for bandwidth constrained devices. So that was amazing. So this is an absolutely iconic device. I'm sure there are so many people out there who could tell us some more stories about this device, tell us some of the really amazing areas where they did things like caller ID, calendaring, all those sorts of things that were just fascinating. And of course, you had that rich PC-like experience on a screen, all controlled through the keypad. So super, super, cutting-edge technology at the time.
Yeah,
very cool. Very cool.
But of course, this wasn't a commercial product. And the story of the commercial product is one which I would imagine there are people who still have the scars on their backs. And this feels like a good opportunity to present one of the very, very rare devices in the collection. And I'll show you the box first. This is the Sendo Z100.
Beautiful box.
They did a nice job, right?
Yeah,
It's all there. It's got the Windows logo on the side there. You can see Sendo, all of the information about the device. This is a development sample, not for resale. You can see that on there. And I'm told by people who were working at Sendo that there may only have been around 150 of these devices ever manufactured. And under the terms of the settlement, because we'll go into the story in a moment about the litigation that followed, all of these devices were supposed to have been destroyed. But I think on this particular show, we have 2 intact devices. Pete, I think you have one there too. So, these are super rare. I am told that at Microsoft, they literally had to take an electric drill to these and drill holes through them to destroy them.
Right.
When the kind of litigation.
Yeah. I was not at Microsoft. So we were building Java virtual machines for handsets and Insignia solutions. And so our JVM was on this device, and that's why we had one of these, was to develop that. So this is before my time at Microsoft, which is why I was able to keep this one.
Well, or not return it. But anyway, I'm sure.
I never had any lawyer contact me about putting that hole in the device. So.
Actually, I'm standing by waiting for both of you to have like a knock on your door any minute.
That's right.
No, I think enough time has now passed, and there will be people watching this who will be very grateful that we saved these devices. So, so this was super important. Sendo started planning this in like 2001. They were in the original document, which you can see on the Mobile Phone Museum webpage. There's actually the original reference document that was written by Sendo. They were benchmarking this product alongside some of the devices we talked about in the last episode. So products like this, the Triumph Mondo or the Ericsson R380 or other, pretty basic devices. So this was revolutionary. 99 grams. It was designed to be the smallest and lightest GSM smartphone with the most built-in functionality.
Yeah, if you look at it, I mean, relative to, like we were talking about, the Nokias of the day, I mean, it's pretty close.
Yeah.
Form factor wise.
So anyway, Sendo were working really at the story as I know it. And again, I'm totally open on this podcast in terms of, I stand corrected if we're not getting the story right. But the story as it's been told to me is that Sendo were working very hard on this. They were interacting with Microsoft, and there was just delay after delay after delay. And in the end, the view from the Sendo camp was that Microsoft never really intended to take this product to market. It was a vehicle for Microsoft to skill up on what they needed to do to go to market. Now, they strongly refute that. Every single one of these allegations in their counterclaim or their response to the claim that Sendo made to the court in Texas, they refute all of that. But some of the writing in the lawsuit is unbelievably inflammatory. So to quote from the lawsuit, Microsoft set about through a secret plan, in quotes, to obtain technology and know-how from Sendo with the false promise that Microsoft would co-develop, help finance, and be the go-to-market for Sendo's smartphone, the Z100. And it went on to claim that Microsoft's plan was to, quote, plunder the small company of proprietary information, technology, technical expertise, market knowledge, customers, and prospective customers. Of course, this was a huge claim. And the allegation was that this information had been taken and passed to an ODM, original design manufacturer, which was HTC at the time, who were working on another product. And Microsoft was, pushing Sendo to the point where Sendo was verging towards bankruptcy. Now, as I say, Microsoft responded to all of Sendo's claims, completely denying that. They said that it was ultimately down to Sendo's numerous breaches in terms of the commitment that they'd made, and that Sendo was in a perilously, difficult financial position, and that's what caused the problem. It was all eventually settled in September 2004 when both parties walked away, and all of these devices were destroyed. But the device where the allegation
Almost
was made of, where did this go, was this product here, the Orange SPV, also known, I think, as Canary was the code name on this. And this was launched with a huge amount of fanfare in London at an event. There were all sorts of people on stage. Matt, you may be able to remember some of the people who were on stage demoing this product when it came out.
Yeah, we do. There's a video you found the other day, Ben, where we saw a few people on there that we knew as well.
Yeah, so Richard Brennan from Orange was on stage. I think
Andy Thomas was there as well.
Andy Thomas was there. Yeah, Juha Christensen, I think, was on stage talking a lot about this. So this is an amazing product. This was the first commercially shipping device using the Stinger platform that had been developed here, and it was a super important product. It had all sorts of weird and wonderful things. It had a clip-on camera. It also had this amazing fabric keyboard here, which you could slot the phone into. And when I was going through the museum archive for all the real Microsoft nerds, I found this iteration, which I wasn't even aware that we had, which was a version of the keyboard that also had the Microsoft Windows-powered labels stitched onto it.
Wow.
If anyone knows anything about this keyboard, love to hear from you.
That looks like literally the hardest keyboard in the world to use, I think.
They weren't too bad. They were made by a company called Elkatech, who were doing a lot of these fabric keyboards, and they integrated this into clothing as well. And Nokia, a guy called Ansi Van Yoki, had them on a ski trip where they were integrated into a ski jacket. But I do remember going to Nokia's HQ with the SPV, with this setup, and sitting in a meeting room, typing my emails on this device. And Ansi Van Yoki came in, and I was trying to explain to him what a threat this was to Nokia. And he completely dismissed it, literally cut me off, cut me dead. And you know what? He was absolutely right. He was looking at me, shaking his head, saying,
"You were probably the only one actually using that for an email." It's like, oh, they sold one. Okay.
So there's a whole host of stories around this device. Florian Seischer was very involved in this. As I said, the big story was the lawsuit between between Sendo and the allegations that the IP from this device ended up in this device.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's one of the things that we talk about the guests on is like Microsoft was always in this business right on the edge of making their own hardware. They were doing reference designs, very close collaboration. We talked to Joe Belfiore later in the series. He talks about the chassis strategy and being very prescriptive about what you could build. But they never quite crossed, except for the kin. Microsoft never made their own phone. And so, there's an argument there about, if they had actually taken the plunge back in the Stinger timeframe, and not just made prototypes,
would the world have been different?
Phones and got into the business. How would that platform story have changed, over time? Because ultimately, one of the challenges of Microsoft had with their platform is they weren't generating enough revenue off of licenses to really become $1 billion business. Yeah. And if they had been in the hardware business, that would have been a different story. At the time, someone reminded us that Microsoft was pouring a ton of money into Xbox at the time and building and losing a lot of money on
losing
hardware.
A lot of money.
And so there was not a lot of appetite to do that again in the phone space, even though it was proposed multiple times to acquire some of these partners and kind of get into the hardware business. But it's interesting. Zune was another example where Microsoft did get into the hardware business. So they were always sort of right on the edge of being in the hardware, being in the phone device hardware business. Never quite went over. And I think, Ben, with the phones you're showing showed how close Microsoft was, especially in the beginning, to just really sort of just doing the hardware.
Absolutely. And making really cutting edge, really nice looking hardware. And talking of reference designs again, we'll kind of wrap up this Stinger story with another product. And I saw, as you were preparing to record these shows, you had a picture of this device, which apparently I think they sent to some of the Microsoft team. And this is the Microsoft AR11. And this is quite a rare reference design device. So we talked about HTC manufacturing this device here. the SPV. This was manufactured by another original design manufacturer, ODM, called Compal Communications.
Yeah.
And apparently this was a very, very key product in the development of the Stinger OS. So it was used internally at Microsoft. Apparently it had multiple names. AR11 was one, Avenger 2, Red E was another. And there were quite a lot of firsts on this. It's quite a light device. It had a magnesium mechanical design, which at the time was very unique. Obviously, that went on to be a benchmark. You could debug it through an Ethernet connector, which must have made a huge difference when they were working on the code. Super robust because of that magnesium chassis. And Microsoft, and we've got one somewhere, I couldn't find the box, but they did a whole developer kit around this device and other collateral for third-party developers to encourage them to make Windows smartphone apps. And there are a few names related to this product. So Matt Taylor, who I mentioned before, Kabir Siddique, I think I'm not pronouncing it maybe right, Jeremy Jacobson and Dave Voth were working on this product. So, this is a very, very important device in terms of integration, power performance, processor performance. And as I said, working very, very closely with Texas Instruments on this and their Perseus chip. So super important device. And I think if we have all of those devices, if I can get them all in my hands somehow, it really is an amazing story in terms of, the genesis of Stinger and the smartphone 2002 platform, which was so important to Microsoft.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
That's great stuff. Wow.
Yeah.
Magnesium phones, state of the art.
Cool.
Yeah.
So in terms of maybe where we go next time, just a little teaser, because we kind of done Stinger. I don't want to go further forward, but obviously we were all cooing over this amazing fabric keyboard. Well, keyboards were an interesting challenge, and Stinger was very much designed around the fact that no touch screen, input through the keys. So, and it was a traditional keypad. But of course,
T9, I think T9.
T9 keypad, yeah.
T9 keypad, and that traditional key number-based keypad. A device that we'll come on to next time, and we'll start hopefully teasing you with a few of the weird and wonderful phones that use the Microsoft platform, is the Motorola MPX, which reintroduced a touch screen, had a stylus, but first and foremost was a phone designed to put to your ear in the clamshell form factor, which was so popular. You can see those traditional numbers on the keypad there, as you would expect to have. But the magic of this incredible industrial design was the fact that also it could be opened in a kind of communicator style.
Fantastic.
But that's one for next time, gentlemen. We will come on to that when we record again.
Yeah, that was
revolutionary.
That falls into the what were they thinking category of phones, but trying to be all things to all people. But that was part of it too. Like you mentioned, the some of the developers that we talked to back then was that part of this challenge, as we're seeing now, is that as people were innovating in this early days, there was a lots of different form factors, screen sizes, input mechanisms, touchscreen, not touchscreen. And so that was challenging for a lot of the app developers too. It was like, well, I want to write apps to get onto these devices, but which device am I targeting? I mean, Pocket PC and the smartphone OS were two different platforms, right? And so that was the beginning of some of the challenges Microsoft had, was to kind of rally the developer community around some standard platforms. So it was
hugely problematic for the development team. And I'm sure there are people who can talk about it with great authority. So really interesting. So so much so. Please visit the website, go read the write-ups of these devices. Please fill in the gaps. You can reach us via the website or hello@mobilephonemuseum.com. We'd love to hear your stories.
Fantastic. Well, Ben and Matt, thanks again. And we look forward to the next episode.
Great.
Thanks.
All right. Bye.
Man, that was there was a lot going on there.
Absolutely. I was like, oh my God. That was,
And that collection is insane.
It really is,
the prototypes and all that stuff. I mean, I thought, to me, like, this was an interesting turning point in the history of the platform, because like we were saying, this is where Microsoft was trying to get the platform into the real phone form factor,
right?
As opposed to the old Pocket PC kind of PDA. And that was tough.
It was tough. I think
You
there was.
know,
I think there were battling forces even within mobile communications business. You know, there
right?
were because there were always a lot of people who liked that big screen and touch.
Yeah, and that was kind of the way forward. And then people were holding on to the T9
Yeah,
basically, right?
yeah.
And saying like, how close can we get to that traditional form factor? I don't know if we have one, but there was wasn't HTC made a flip phone T9 smartphone, I think.
Yeah, I think
You
they
remember
did.
that thing?
I think they did. Yeah.
I think it had a
Yeah.
big window on the outside too,
Right. Right.
which like no one used. I mean, talk about developer challenges, like one off.
Everything was a one-off.
Everything
Oh
was a
my
one
God.
off.
It really was. That's what
Yeah.
happens. A lot of the stuff we talk about when we're interviewing guests is how do you apply some of these learnings to business today? And saying yes to everyone is not a good idea. I know you
That's
want to
right.
please people. There are a lot of people pleasers and
People
all these
pleasers.
constituents, and you want them to be happy. But man, that's when you end up with some kind of Frankenstein phone thing.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, let me we found, it's hard to find the Windows mobile videos. Like there's a lot of Windows phone videos. When we get to later episodes, we have all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But the Windows mobile ones are a little tougher to find, but we did find one that I think encapsulates, speaking of being everything to everyone, and trying to make everyone happy. Let's take a look at this video. And this is kind of where the Windows mobile folks were at, where their head was at in terms of marketing back then. So hold on for a second. Let's take a look at this thing. Okay, let's see what happens. Actually, the music doesn't play for a while. There it is. After the start button.
I remember this video at MEDC.
It's like, heavy. This is like a rock thing going on.
Yeah. It gets people going in the same way that Steve Ballmer does.
See, there's a media player, there's photos, there's game, there's everything. This does everything.
How is that possible? I thought we didn't get any of this stuff till the iPhone. What? Mobile workforce?
On the go. The on-the-go guy, he was very popular in a lot of marketing material.
Absolutely.
Saw him a lot. Train. Thousands of applications.
Wow.
So,
download those CAD files.
There's one of those phones we just talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah, funky keyboards.
Solutions.
There's the Trio. We'll talk about the Trio.
Yeah. I mean, that was like calculating Excel columns and stuff. That's like real business.
Does everything.
It does everything. Wow. How could you not want that phone?
There you go. I mean, that is what it's all about.
That's what it's all about. Everything.
So imagine being a developer and trying to target that platform. It's hard to even say it's a platform, but that's what happened. But maybe that's a good entree into meeting up with our guests.
Yeah,
so we can
absolutely.
What
were they thinking?
We'll find out. All right, here we go. Let me show my little ticker at the bottom. We have some special guests we're going to talk to today this is episode 2, talking about developer platform in kind of the early era of Microsoft, and have some really special guests here along with my co-host Rob, James Pratt, Ginny, Caughy, and Loke, and Loke 10. So that's fantastic. I really appreciate everyone being here. I think it's going to be a really fun conversation. And maybe we can kind of start with each of you, giving a little intro. Not everyone knows who you are. I think those who are familiar with Windows Mobile, everyone knows who you are. But maybe you can sort of explain how you came to the platform, how you got involved in it, who are you, all that good stuff. Maybe start with James on the top.
I was hoping somebody else could go first.
Okay.
So my name is James Pratt. From 1998 to 2003, I ran developer teams building bespoke software on Windows CE, Pocket PC devices, including the software that shipped with all early smartphone devices to do configuration of settings, which was very difficult at the time for normal human beings. And then from 2003 through 2006, I joined Microsoft and I was the product manager for the Windows mobile developer tools.
Fantastic. Ginny, why don't you go? You're the MVP. literally.
Still am. Originally, I was an embedded MVP, doing work on Windows CE devices. I do garbage software for a living. Yes, really. I'm an ISV company focused on the solid waste industry. And the first Windows embedded device that I had was a mobile point of sale, ran a mobile point of sale application for garbage. So, and I'm still doing garbage, but
Very
sadly
practical.
not on Windows CE anymore.
Wah, wah.
I know.
That's a later episode. We'll talk about that.
Okay.
And Loke.
Oh, my name is Loke Tan. I originally worked for Microsoft in the developer evangelism side of the house. And then James and John, our old manager, came knocking on the door and say, hey, you guys want to run some Windows Mobile Developer Conference in KL in Malaysia? And I said, hell yeah, why not? And we did 2 really successful events. The developers loved the platform. And then I got hired and moved my family to the US. That was like 17 years ago or something.
Time flies.
Crazy. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now I work for an augmented reality company called Magic Leap. So that's fun.
There you go. Yeah, I actually Loke and I met because right after I started in 2005, and I was asked to go give the keynote at the MEDC conference, which I'm sure we'll talk about, one of James's brainchilds, and it was in Melbourne, Australia, and in KL, Kuala Lumpur, and I was like literally on the job for like a couple of months, so kind of fake it till you make it, I guess. And so I met Loke when I was out in KL there for the first time. So 2005.
It was a great event. You surely couldn't tell.
It was.
You
I know. Yeah, I kind of winged it. That's what I'm still doing. I'm still winging it.
We're all faking it, man.
I was going to say,
whatever works.
That's right.
So, yeah, fantastic. So I really appreciate that. Let me hide our special guest ticker. So let's get into it now. Let's get to the serious part of the conversation. So, yeah, I mean, we're talking about the era of Windows Mobile, Windows CE. We're talking about kind of late 90s to kind of mid 2005, 6-ish time frame. I mean, what were some of your big, memories of that time? And what kind of, when you think about all the cool stuff that was happening back then, what comes to mind for you first? Anybody want to chime in on that?
Well, I'll start. I thought the tools were great because previously the only mobile device that I'd worked on was made by Telzon.
Telzon.
And, and the programming language was some variant of COBOL called TCAL. Yuck. Okay. So being able to use C++ and later C# on or VB if you preferred was really a big step forward. The devices were great. There were emulators that you could use with the developer tools.
And
it
real
was so much easier. Real emulators. So it was a great development environment. It was a great experience. The devices were kind of pricey, but hey, we passed that along to the customers. They didn't mind paying.
But at least they're not as pricey as the Apple Vision Pro. So,
very
pricey devices that never changes.
You could buy 3 industrially hardened Windows CE devices for the price of one of those things. And
oh my gosh, Telzon.
Well, that was one of the big. That was one of the big value props of the platform back then. Was that if you were a Windows developer, and back then everyone was a Windows developer. I mean, we're talking about late 90s, early 2000s. Everybody was a Windows developer who was a developer, and everyone knew those tools and the tool chains and all that stuff. And so it was sort of like a hop, skip, and a jump, a quick hop, to then say, hey, you can bring your apps and your code into a mobile platform, this new mobile pocketable platform. That was kind of the big thing, right?
It was. You could even bring your database if you shrunk it down to SQL CE. That was very big too, because we couldn't count on having connectivity to big SQL Server back in those days, or connectivity at all unless you had a wire connecting one device to another. So it was really important.
Hey, Jenny was Telzon. Wasn't that like the DOS looking text mode kind of thing?
Yes.
On devices?
Yes, it looked very much like that. Green screen. Yep.
Because I kept finding myself helping out Pepsi, Frito-Lay, FedEx, and they all talked about how they were moving from Telzon devices to the first ever graphical device.
Oh yeah,
which was us. You know,
it was a whole new world.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
as Windows and desktop developers, it's amazing that you could just suddenly build an app for a mobile device, right? Something you can keep in your hands, in your pockets, right? But it was really interesting. It also introduced us to usability issues on a mobile device, right?
True.
When you try to put a tiny scroll bar, tiny buttons, and drop-down menus within a screen that small, and we go, "Oh, that doesn't really work."
Well, we did have stylus back then instead of a finger. So
that was the age of the stylus. Everyone had to have a stylus.
Had to have a stylus.
They weren't capacitive touch, right? I mean, it was resistive touch. So
right.
Fun fact: in my interview for Microsoft in 2003, I got into a discussion with Kevin Lasota about whether it would be better to prioritize. I think it was a toothbrush holder or a toothpaste dispenser in replacement of the stylus on a mobile device.
That's good.
Well, what did you decide?
Yeah, exactly.
I think it was the toothpaste, although I don't know why. Now I'm thinking about it. It's like, well, the toothpicks would be much more useful. But anyway, I guess that's what happens in Microsoft. I genuinely didn't think I'd gotten the job after that conversation. So
that is a curveball. That's a curveball.
That is a curveball.
Well, the Microsoft interview process back then was probably a lot different than it is now. So
that's very different than the typical manhole question.
Manhole cover. Why is it round?
Kevin liked to go off on a wacky conversation, so he was like totally up for it. But
I see.
But Pete, you make a great. You said it was a value proposition of the mobile, offering from Microsoft. I think it was the value proposition. There was nowhere else at that time, I think, Microsoft could expect to dominate its competitors than developer tools, developer ecosystem, developer platform, like all that stuff. Like I think we did lots of great work across this whole organization, but I really genuinely think that what we were doing was make or break for the platform.
Well, I mean, I think if you get the developer momentum is so valuable. I mean, I just came from NVIDIA GTC down in San Jose this past week. Got in last night, and millions of developers on CUDA and doing this, that, and the other thing. You just get this incredible force multiplier on your business. And I think Microsoft had that in spades back in the 90s, 2000s, right? It means everyone was a Windows developer. Like you said, James, it was like kind of the value prop at the time.
Yeah.
And businesses ran on Windows software too. So
true. Everyone ran on Windows.
Yeah, it's very business focused as well.
Yeah.
Tens of millions of Win32 apps were built in the 90s. And it runs while we talk about how COBOL still runs the global financial system, most of the rest of business is still being run by all these Win32 apps that got built in the 90s for Windows.
Very true.
True.
Very true.
Yeah.
Still there.
They're still there.
Although these were all ARM devices, but still the same tool chain, right?
Yeah, you just recompiled.
They also we had multiple platforms back then too. I mean, it wasn't all perfect. We had the CE platform. We had Windows Mobile. We had Pocket PC platform.
Yep.
So we were a little bit bifurcated, right? I think James, you were showing me earlier that flip phone that we had. So that was a Windows Mobile phone platform versus the Pocket PC platform. So it was a little bit of.
Permit me to kind of disambiguate because you've rolled a few kind of things into one there. So
okay.
So originally Windows CE, Ginny, right, was the embedded platform for embedded devices, embedded systems. That was taken as the underlying operating system for Pocket PC and smartphone. So Pocket PC came first, and which was more for kind of palm-sized devices, and then smartphone was intended to be for smartphones like this one, for example. Then the brand police got involved, and so we had to have something more Microsoft-y, and then it became Windows Mobile for Pocket PC, Windows Mobile for smartphone. Then it got even more stupid, and it went Windows Mobile 2003 for Pocket PC, and then the best one was Windows Mobile Mobile 2003 for Pocket PC second edition.
Oh.
How dare Microsoft?
Involved with fighting deeply but lost. So, and then
didn't even have enough room on the box for that one.
Yeah. And then eventually that became eventually became Windows Phone.
Yeah, but from a developer perspective, there was a little bit of a subset of some capabilities from one platform from the other, obviously.
Oh yeah,
yes, absolutely,
very much so. Yeah.
And as Loke made the point, the UI design for each of those was quite different.
Yeah.
On one of them it was likely to be touch, the other one was likely to be not touch. That was obviously a huge thing. The buttons you had available, on one versus the other were very different. So I spent a lot of my time, in those 3 or 4 years that I was with the team, doing things to educate developers about how to navigate gracefully writing software for both platforms.
Yeah.
And I would say when Windows Mobile 5 came out, which was 2005, that was when, with the latest version of the Visual Studio tools, it became much more drag and drop. So you could drag and drop your UI together. You didn't have to kind of code, put a window here, make it this size, this button. You just...
Was it called WinForms?
I can't remember. I've probably got the manual here somewhere. I can look it up.
Exactly.
But you're right. It was utilizing the WinForms for the .NET Compact framework.
Yeah.
Yeah, Net Compact framework made a big difference. It's a real productivity gain.
Yeah, I remember having to worry about the resolutions too, or orientation of your applications, right? And then you have to write 2 different types. And then later on, we have to deal with switching those devices that you could actually switch.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
And then...
So Loke and James, tell us the name of the marketing campaign to help your app adapt to different screen sizes.
Oh God, did we have one? Because
we did.
I can't remember what it was, and I have a horrible feeling I came up with the idea.
It was just called Adapt Your App. We had
Adapt Your App.
Oh, that wasn't me, kid.
Yeah. But that was an important thing, as you said, James. I mean, because all of a sudden, my takeaway, and Pete and I have talked about this a lot, the most innovation we've ever seen in smartphone hardware actually happened back then. And people are building crazy devices with different screen sizes.
Crazy.
Which was exciting. But for the developer, they're like, oh my gosh, do I have to build 10 different apps to adjust to all these screen sizes, which gave rise to docking and anchoring and a bunch of weird things to help people, because they wanted people to be able to just write one time, right?
Good luck with
the
that.
variation. I mean, today, right? I mean, there's virtually no variation whatsoever on smartphones, right? But back then, remember the Motorola that opened in 2 different directions?
Yeah.
The MQX.
Yeah.
I mean, you just showed the Jazz Jar, which was another funky one. Plus you had the 12-key flip phones. I mean, it was all over the place.
Oh, that phone is
good.
With the external screen, that had an external screen too. Like, how to get to that thing?
One of the best phones.
And flip phones are back.
Yeah.
I heard Gen Z likes flip phones. That's what I heard. I don't know.
The complexity in UI wasn't just in the orientation, like the portrait, landscape, or in fact square. Square is a big deal. Square. I forget what the device was, but square came along. It's like, oh my God, we've got all these assumptions made on being one bigger or the other. Anyway, but then you got resolutions as well. So screen resolution started to come in, and then people would run their apps, and it would be like up here in the corner with a whole big blank space around here because they've made assumptions about the DPI of the screen and stuff like that. So I'm realizing as we sit here, like there's a lot that goes into even the basics of building a developer ecosystem for these kind of devices. Just around helping people make them present in the right way.
Right.
And James, I thought the hardest one to build for was that one phone we did that was circular.
The O phone.
The O phone.
I remember that.
Oh.
Now, was that really a thing?
It was Derek Snyder's comedy. Wait, it had the 3 wings, right?
Yeah, the 3 wings.
Yes. That was so funny.
Oh, that was good. Yeah.
The video is still on YouTube,
done.
by the way. It's still on YouTube.
It is. That was a fun MVP thing.
Yeah.
The O phone.
We'll have to throw it up there somewhere in this
that stuff. Playing video games. They're all playing with each other, bouncing the ball around. And That's hilarious.
Well, that's when like, device builders, that was part of their differentiation, was what kind of form factor can I come up with that no one else has, whether it's square screens or flip screens or the MPX, open two-way screen. That was part of the deal. I mean, these days it's obviously much more mundane, and we've hit this asymptote of boredom with phones. Although I would say the flip phone is a little.
That's it.
Yeah, it's basically
that's all you get in a slate.
That's it.
You're right.
More
or
camera
you can
holes.
flip it open to that. Yeah.
Boring.
Yeah. Or you have some dual screen. You have some still dual screen stuff is like in the 1% of the market category. But back then, yeah, every phone was different.
Or a little teeny screen like this
That's
one.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. Absolutely. So
But also the devices back then weren't very locked down, right? I mean, there was a lot of ways to hack those things and put all kinds of funky builds on them, and nothing was really fused.
XDA developers.
Yes.
Right.
Remember
XDA developers.
Yes.
Yeah. But you know that brings up one of our esteemed coworkers back then, Dan Bowie, was in charge of the getting apps certified and that whole ecosystem marketplace. I don't know what we called it. I mean,
Mobile to Market was the program.
That's right. Yeah. Dan was great. And, you know, I remember when I was an MVP, like Ginny and Chris Tacky and all those crazy people.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I remember reaching out. That was like one of the first connections I had was with Dan to get, because I was like making all these little small applications and controls and selling them on Handango. And I had to, that's who I contacted was Dan to get them certified.
Wow.
And so who knew? Yeah, it was crazy.
And what was Handango for people who don't remember?
It was a website. So before you had app stores built into the phone, you could go to websites and had categories of apps. BlackBerry was kind of having to do a similar thing. In fact, I think they saw BlackBerry apps on there too. And so we had this magical thing called a cab file. And so your whole app could be downloaded via a cab file and then installed and launched and that kind of thing. And so we were all selling cab files basically, you know.
Right. No app stores.
No app stores.
And here I think we come to a critical part of the whole sort of Windows Mobile developer story, where the reason there was a website was because there was nowhere to find applications. So people created their own websites with lists of applications.
Sure.
It was also incredibly difficult to install an app on a device for anyone who wasn't on this call. Do you know what I mean? Like you have to get this thing and download it onto your computer somewhere, then get ActiveSync up and running, which was no mean feat. And then like drag it across to the right place, and then find it on the other. Too complicated, right? Yeah. So one of the things Dan pioneered was trying to get a Microsoft App Store onto the Windows Mobile platform, so that we could make it easier for people to find and get applications. Because this is one of everything we're talking about. This seems like obvious. Everything we're talking about seems obvious. But you've got to step back in time 20 years to the Wild West, as we said. This stuff wasn't obvious. So Dan created this app store. It was built a few times. It kept, for a variety of reasons, getting killed. That I think, you know, if you've spoken already to Peter or Todd or any of those people, it would be interesting to hear their perspective about why the app store kept getting killed. But having built this great asset, all these thousands of developers working on Windows Mobile, that was the one area we failed, was to get them a way to get their applications on devices easily and help them make money.
Yeah. And at the time they had like the Qualcomm Brew platform that had a store, you know. I mean, you had that. They had, you know, J2ME, Java midlets, you know, on other devices. But for some reason, even though probably Microsoft had the strongest developer ecosystem, we probably had the weakest distribution system.
Yeah,
well,
I think
that could be partly because we could sideload, and that was really helpful in the enterprise because you could use the remote API, which just sort of automated ActiveSync, to install your business application directly on the little device and push the data down, pull the data back up, do whatever you needed.
Right.
So
and
we
this
had
was
that
primarily
flexibility.
it was primarily a business market too. I mean, thinking
very much so. Very much so.
If you had one of these things on your hip, you know, in one of those cool cases on your belt loop, then you were, you know, definitely a freaker geek.
And I'm sure operators got in the way. I'm sure, right? Operators were king back then, right?
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, once you talked about, maybe that's why they kept getting killed, was the monetization of the apps and how the operators would want to, because operators were really running the show back then. I mean, it wasn't until iPhone and other became much more of a device-centric market. I mean, it's still a very mobile operator centric, but back then it was mobile operators were kind of running the show and probably wanted on the monetization of those apps. And that's
do you remember back then it was like 5% developer and 95% operator, right? Or something, the revenue.
Was it?
Wow.
Something really, really bad. And then Apple just basically flipped the thing around.
Yeah.
Yeah, Apple only takes 30%, you know, so.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Well, how much did Fandango take? Do you remember, Ron?
I don't remember. It wasn't that much. I mean, I remember thinking I was rich.
Okay.
At some point, I was like making an extra $400 a month selling controls and stuff. And I do remember asking my wife if we could hire someone to mow the lawn instead of me, since I'm making all this extra bank.
But that's what we wanted. We wanted people to be able to bring their creativity, their ideas for apps and experiences on the devices, and to be able to make money.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
It's true.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Because we could all see what this platform could be. All the apps that you get today, we could see them 20 years ago. We could see where things were going. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Definitely.
But I have an opinion, Pete, on the why the store thing didn't happen. It's my opinion based on things I've heard from other people. So in order to install a device, an app on a device, you need to have a certificate, a root certificate on there, right? So Microsoft has a root certificate, Verizon has a root certificate, you know, whoever's made the device has a root certificate that allows you to install your application signed with that certificate. So I've heard it. There was a large deal that was mooted for new devices on running Windows Mobile on a large network. I think possibly Verizon. I forget. And as a condition of that deal, Verizon wanted to take out our certificate so that we couldn't put applications on there. Again, this is hearsay. Don't know if this is true or not. And so that's what happened. You know, device went out there, no certificate. We had no way of putting apps on there, right? So at that point, we can't go to developers and we can't say, "Hey, we can get your app on all devices," because it's not on the Verizon device, right? So we fragmented our ecosystem.
Yeah.
I will sharply contrast this though to Steve Jobs, who, in his negotiations with AT&T, basically said, "You'll do it our way, or we're not doing it." I forget what the famous words he said were, but like, do you want to be the company that passed on the iPhone? Something very Jobsy in that respect.
Yes. Yes.
And so I just think we weren't as willing to assert what we believe was the right thing to do in the face of like, we just need to sell a bunch more units. Which is sad. But then we also know that somebody like, whether it was to Warren or Peter or whoever it was, they were under a lot of pressure within the company. The company was under pressure not to be anti-competitive.
Oh, right.
That's the time frame.
That was a big deal.
Yeah.
So, and also Microsoft had a business selling to telcos, right? So I mean, these were businesses that were buying Microsoft, Office and Exchange and things like that, right? So they were big customers, and so there was a different dynamic where Apple didn't have a revenue stream coming from telcos as part of their business. So but certainly one of the innovations, we always talk about product innovations, but business model innovation or ecosystem innovation can be just as powerful, if not more powerful. That's actually probably a good lesson for a lot of product builders and business builders today is you may have designed a better widget, but do you have the business model innovation or the disruption built into your go-to-market to really make it successful? And, in the same way, that's an easy way to kill a great product too, is to not have the right business model and channel around it, which, that was a struggle. I think Microsoft really struggled with that for forever. So it's a good point.
There were Microsoft execs literally laughing when the iPhone was launched that it didn't have a keyboard.
Yeah.
Well, the Steve Ballmer clip does not age well. I'm sure we'll show that.
I wasn't naming names. That's all I'm saying.
He wasn't the last laugh because I think he's like one of the top 3 richest people in the world right now. So.
Remind me again, what was he passionate? What was he passionate about?
One was developers. That was for sure.
Developers.
Yeah, 3 was developers. Yep.
How many
Yeah.
times did we think he was going to literally have a heart attack on stage?
Every
Remember
time.
he'd be
Yeah.
sweating and he's like,
Oh,
ah!
I had the tiger. I had the tiger. Yeah.
Yes, I had the tiger. Oh my
But
gosh.
he also believed it. He believed in developers.
Oh, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
actually, now I
you're
think
right.
about it, it's so strange that we didn't prioritize developers more as a company on the Windows mobile devices.
Mm.
Does that
That's a
make
good
sense?
point.
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
Ballmer saying developers create the air that we breathe.
Yeah.
And it's like, if everybody believed that, yeah, maybe our focus would have been sharper at developers. I don't know.
You missed the bit where he went, except for mobile devices.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Exactly.
right.
Right.
No, that's a good point. Wow.
Yeah.
If I think, Jenny, when I think about I was an embedded MVP. And so for me, it was, you said it was those tools, as I've told you before, it was like, the year 2000, the iPac comes out from Compaq.
Yep.
MSDN magically in 2000, these developer tools just appear with emulators for this thing called the Pocket PC. They're free to download. It was embedded VB and embedded C++.
Right.
And they were actually built by another company called B Square.
Oh.
And
I wondered about that.
Oh, yes, B Square
But they
built
were
all
good.
that stuff. They were
It
good.
was good.
And they got the ball rolling because you could drag and drop and build simple embedded VB apps. And and what predates our little Windows CE, our little compact framework and our database was there was literally a pocket access.
That's right. There was.
And remember, it was also exposed as part of ActiveSync. And you could say, click little
You could
check
sync the
boxes,
data.
what tables you want from Pocket Access to go to your desktop. And that seemed magical at the time.
Oh, yeah.
It was.
Yeah. It was crazy, And so it's like, and for me, my first exposure, aside from the iPac, was more in that kind of business rugged space. I saw the early growth was Symbol and Intermec, which was up by the Boeing plant by Everett, and a bunch, and they're building ruggedized Windows mobile barcode scanners, and that was huge. That was huge. And in fact,
barcodes were big before QR codes. That was how we got data onto the device.
Yeah. And we kind of owned that space. And in fact, even as we kind of started to head into the sunset, for a long time, we still owned that space.
Yeah.
Because until Android finally grabbed it later on, but it was like, it was different than the consumer world,
very different. Yeah.
All the way into, they saw what it was, the last version was like 653 devices, Windows mobile devices running
Crossbow.
Yeah, Crossbow. Yeah, running on there. Now, what was the significance of Windows Mobile 6.1? Does anybody remember?
Is that voice over IP?
Well, that was in there. It was device management.
Oh, MDM.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Enterprise feature.
Yes.
Yeah, right?
Yes. I think the code name was Yona or something. And
it integrated with whatever Microsoft's overall enterprise management tools were.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it SMS? What is
That's
it?
Yeah. It ended up becoming like System Center Mobile Device Manager. But and that was built by our team. It wasn't built by the System Center team. Of course, as we've learned, a lot of things that you thought were built by other product groups, like, I don't know, Office, were actually built by us.
Yeah, Office was built by the mobile team, not by the Office team.
Who knew? Who knew that picture you saw with guns pointing at different product groups was actually true? Who knew?
That's right.
Yeah. That probably didn't help, but there was a lot of things that the mobile team built on its own, and while the other product teams were like, we're not going to stop you, but it wasn't a big priority for them at the time. So, I was wondering, so anything, like, we talked a little bit about sort of business model innovation, some things that like product builders, business builders today could kind of learn from this whole history. Anything that you have top of mind that you would give advice to for startups today, or people doing entrepreneurial things at companies that kind of stuck in your mind from this era?
I've got two.
Okay.
I think it's illustrative that the people that are on this call we're all passionate customers of the product that we all ended up working on, right? All of us came to it in our different ways.
Yeah.
But I think that illustrates that if you're going to build a product, you have to intimately know your customers. And I see people make this mistake a lot, where they just, I think we did that so well in this group of just being with people like Ginny, for example, who was one of our MVPs, just knowing her very kind of well and spending time with her. So that's the first thing, know your customers. Second thing is, I think it's encoded in the example I gave about the certificate, which is, and Pete, talking to what you're saying, you have to know what business you're in and what the rules of the game are, right? You have to know, and therefore you can pick the strategy that can win with those rules. And then you have to have the courage to actually play the game to win. And I don't think ultimately we played the game to win. We just lost courage, right at the last minute. And so I think great product people do those two things. They're courageous and bold. Steve Jobs was courageous and bold in this space.
Good takeaway.
Although, to be fair, Microsoft was playing with one hand tied behind its back.
Well, there were different pressures going on. It was a different
Yeah.
company with different revenue pressures from different divisions. Right. So at the end of the day, it was about priorities. And yeah, you could argue whether the right decisions were made or not. But ultimately, in a bigger company with multiple revenue streams that were sort of sometimes, all scraping for the same priority. But, I mean, one of the reasons why this whole series started was because Satya said that one of his regrets was not having Microsoft succeed in the mobile space. Which kind of spurred that one thing that Rob posted on LinkedIn, kind of spurred a lot of conversation.
People were like, duh.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Nailed it.
Isn't it funny thinking about being worried about playing well with others and stuff like that with phones? And now we have a lawsuit with Apple because they don't want people to have green bubbles.
Over green bubbles.
Yes, it's over green bubbles.
Yeah.
Yes, this is crazy. Yeah, totally.
Because they did something a little bit better on their own platform.
Right. Maybe, it's like, no, we're just building the products that our customers want, and we're super successful. Sorry, Yeah, it's interesting how that all plays out. But also, at that time frame, as we've in other conversations, Microsoft was throwing seemingly good money after bad at another hardware product called Xbox at the time. And we dug the deepest hole you can imagine on hardware before the 360 finally crawled out of that deep hole. And so you can imagine.
And then lost $1 billion with the Red Rings of Death thing.
Putting
it straight back in that hole again, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can imagine, like, maybe we shouldn't be in the hardware game when you think about HTC or something like that,
There was definitely not as strong of an appetite back then. And, I think Peter speaks to this in a previous episode too, where, clearly there was a lot of push by him and others in the leadership team to get into the hardware business on the phone side a lot faster so that there would be more control over the destiny there. Because that's where a lot of the margin was and a lot of the revenue. One of the issues in Windows Mobile and the whole Windows Phone, the whole platform, was that being in the kind of the OS royalty business in this space never really generated the kind of revenues internally to Microsoft that justified big investments, right? So they would go every year to get budget for marketing, and it would kind of all be ratcheted down because, well, you're not generating that much. So if Microsoft was actually in the phone business from the beginning. They got in the business at the end with Lumia, by the way, which is a whole other episode.
Well, they did.
They did. Like right at the end, but that would have generated a lot more revenue. But as Rob said, it was rough seas back then being in the hardware business for Microsoft with Xbox. So, that's probably why they got a lot of pushback on that. But in an alternate universe, multiverse somewhere, there's a very successful Microsoft platform that's out there. Virtually every phone is a Microsoft platform somewhere in the multiverse. But
us armchair quarterbacks going, the money we would have paid to buy HTC in 2004 would be a heck of a lot cheaper than what we paid for Nokia years later.
Oh gosh,
dramatically cheaper.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in that universe, developers will be making a ton of money writing apps, right?
Yeah,
that's true. Yes, in this alternative, in this multiverse, yes,
that's right.
They'd be making a ton of money on Microsoft platforms, mobile platforms. Yes.
The first time,
not even mowing his own lawn, right, Rob?
That's right.
or doing
Bob
the
would not be
pool.
mowing his lawn.
Not doing the pool, none of that stuff. It's funny is the first time I ever saw augmented reality in any device was actually one of the Lumia devices.
Right, I remember it.
Remember, it would superimpose the things as you walked around with the map and everything. I was like,
Sure.
what year was that we had
Yeah.
augmented reality on a Windows phone? I mean, talk about.
And it was actually useful.
And it was useful. Yeah.
Yeah, probably 10 years ago at least. Yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
Yeah. Early.
Yeah.
We were early a lot. Analysts who don't know anything go, oh, they missed the market. They never show. I'm like, no, we were there
Too early.
many years before anybody else was.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh man. Yeah. Timing. Right.
Absolutely.
But it was good times. Good times. I mean, the fact that we're all talking about this stuff with such passion, like James said, it was definitely a lot of fun. And we had Laura Butler on the other day recording her for a later show, and she said it's something that, like, this whole mobile experience is something that she'll keep with her for the rest of her life. It was just something that was just passionate thing, like you said. It wasn't just the code.
It was very special.
Yeah. So that's kind of exciting to hear that.
I can say without shadow of doubt that that MEDC 2005, so the Mobile Embedded Dev Conference 2005, is the pinnacle of my career, which I hit very early, unfortunately. But like, it was just one of those moments.
You're
where
still,
everything came
you
together.
got some career left.
Yeah, lots of time, but not saying I haven't had other high points, but I just look back at that and think, like, we created a moment in time, like a fixed point in the universe there, and sadly, it didn't lead to what we hoped it would lead to in the end. I have no regrets. The people I met, Loke, Rob, Ginny, Pete, like everybody I worked with at that time, I have fond memories.
Was that the one with Batman?
I don't remember Batman being there, but possibly.
Yeah, Kevin Lesota is dressed as Batman or something.
I think that was 2004. I think
2004. Okay.
Oh, yeah, I don't remember the
That was the
Batman,
one
but
before.
Bill Gates was the keynote. I know in the
He
Seattle
was.
one.
Yeah.
That was a pretty
Yes, he
epic
was.
thing. And as we started this episode, that was where I met Loke and KL and all that stuff. So yeah, that was
You got to
pretty
show.
epic,
You got to show that thing that you got, James. From
Which
the
one?
back in
The
the-
KL
Kuala
thing?
Lumpur. Yeah. Where's the badge? You still have it.
brochure there.
That's a good badge. Yeah.
I got a
I think
lot
that
of
was
that.
actually.
My backpack.
I think that was actually the last
shirt.
time I was in KL. But you got your gear
Oh,
there.
nice.
I
Backpack.
love it. I
Nice.
love
Still
it.
using it. It's amazing. It's held up.
That's amazing. So
Quality merch. Quality
Here we
merch.
go. Here
Yep.
we go.
here we go.
All right, so it's not very
Ah.
clear. Whoever
Ooh,
ran
yes.
this conference did do a good job.
Badges. Yeah.
But
So wow.
the agenda on the backside.
Look at that.
Oh, I love
There
it.
you go.
Ah,
You can see
nice.
it.
And
Kuala Lumpur, there
JLCC.
you go.
Organized by Loke 10.
That's right.
There
You
we
ran
go.
the-
Great
you
event.
did it
I
all.
remember the breakfast at that hotel. Holy smokes. It was this kind of sort of
Yeah.
Chinese curry infusion breakfast. Oh, so good.
Oh yeah.
You have a
That's
good
great.
story.
That is
That was
so
a
cool.
great
It
time.
must have been a heck of a breakfast.
Yeah, right. Nearly 20 years later, I can
20
still
years
remember.
ago.
I can still remember. I feel like I met Jenny. Like there was before that. Remember, I think we met in New Orleans. It was MDC in
Yes.
03.
Oh,
and
yeah.
04. There was MDC 03 in New Orleans. Bill Gates spoke at that.
Yep.
There's MDC 04, which was in Moscone in San Francisco.
Right.
And
Right.
then they went to MEDC. Yeah.
And
that
at some
was-
point it was in Las Vegas. So maybe that was
Oh,
the
yeah.
last one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did MEDC at the Venetian. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that one.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was a lot
Yeah.
of
It was
fun.
same time frame as Mix, which was
Yeah.
Yes.
kind of interesting.
Never did saw the daylight. From,
No.
From the airport to the hotel and then hotel back
Oh,
to the
right.
airport.
Yeah.
Right.
You're absolutely right. It was the same time as
Mix,
Mix. I
yeah.
literally
Mix.
just pulled this out of a box.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh.
I just found this one too. China.
Yeah.
I've got no idea how my name
Oh,
has been
wow.
translated there. I would love to know if anyone is a Chinese speaker.
We had so much fun doing the world tour of MEDC, just going all around the planet after Vegas.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
to Beijing, going to
Melbourne,
Taipei.
Australia,
Melbourne.
Sydney.
God, we had so much fun. You know, God, that was great. Berlin. I think we finished in Berlin on the 06 one or 07. I don't remember one of those.
Yeah.
The one that Derek Snyder ran. I don't know if that was.
Oh,
Oh,
the
yeah.
6 countries, right?
Yeah,
Or something?
yeah.
Oh, wow, that was
Mm.
amazing.
I just remember we
We-
ended up in Berlin having a dinner, and Derek Snyder somehow talked the owner of the restaurant to play Final Countdown by Europe.
I remember that was the first time you guys introduced me to Facebook on that trip.
Oh, right.
Wow.
Yes.
I signed up for my
wow.
first Facebook account on that trip. Yeah.
Derek gave us invitations. We were sitting in the Berlin, the airport. Yeah. That's crazy.
But again, like in the context of these tours is that, so we put this huge developer conference on in Las Vegas, let's say, 3,000 people come, Bill Gates is our keynote speaker. We announce, I think on that occasion, Windows Mobile 5, right? Which is a huge leap forward in developer tools and ecosystem platform, whatever. But like, that's not it. Like, so we pack up then that whole show and we literally take it on the road like a touring band, right? We don't have all the same players, you know, because we can't afford to take all the same players. So like, you know, Pete is doing the job of Bill Gates and I'm doing the job of the 3 demo people. But we go, you know, to 6 cities around the world to try and get developers there all fired up about all these amazing things that we've done. And we succeeded, I think, everywhere that we went.
Yeah.
And as you've
back
also
then,
discovered,
there was a very enthusiastic community everywhere. You know, like you said, the Windows developers, everyone was developing on Windows back then. And this was exactly what they wanted, was to get this into people's pockets.
I feel like before we made it to Sydney on that tour, we stopped in Christchurch, New Zealand, and had like a small room of really rabid people that we got in Christchurch. That was before the earthquake. And that was
Peter
crazy.
Foote was there, I think, wasn't he? Wasn't he in Christchurch back then?
Not yet.
Not yet.
He moved there later. He was still
Okay.
in the UK. Yes. But the coolest thing, this has nothing to do with anything, is that when Loke and I were in Sydney, we got in front of the Matrix fountain. And Loke had a picture shooting just like from that scene in the Matrix when you look back and you see the woman in the red dress. So anyway,
I remember that.
There's a little trivia. It was important. I remember Loke's like, this is the fountain. This is
We gotta do it. We have to do it. I need to go find that photo. It's somewhere.
I know, that was so cool.
Yeah, it was so cool.
That was fun.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think Michelle Freed did the keynote for us in Sydney or something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
Oh my
Though
god.
every single event was amazing. All sold out. It was great responses from all the developers there. They were so looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
That's awesome.
Hey, so we're coming up on 45, 43 minutes. So we probably want to think about wrapping it up here before we run out of tape. Any kind of closing
what
comments?
decade is this? No, I take the point. Fair enough. We want to wrap things up.
I got the machine here. It's running right here. Yeah.
Well, this is a Christopher Nolan thing, so we actually are using real film. So,
oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's very high quality.
Yeah.
Yeah, 70 millimeter. So closing comments on this developer era. Any takeaways or things that that you think everyone should know? What's your Thanos finger snap moment that you wish you could snap your fingers and something would happen?
Well, maybe not take 18 months to make a decision on what to do with Windows Mobile 7. Right? They should have made the decision like instantaneously, right?
Girl from Mars.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That's right.
There you go.
Well, that's a good point. That was an interesting time that a lot of people don't know about.
Yeah, we were at least 2 years behind at that point when they announced the iPhone, right? And we could have caught up in 2 years, but then it took another year and a half for somebody to make a decision.
Well, that's tough. We'll see. I mean, we have Joe B is going to be coming on the show, so we'll have to ask him about that.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Yeah,
that's good. Yeah,
but there were lots of discussions, right, about backwards compatibility. Were we going to allow the compact framework apps to keep running? Because there was a time when we said, yeah, we would, and then we didn't, and then we had Silverlight, and then
Brave New World.
Yeah, remember performance problems, right? We had a comparison between compact framework and native C applications, right?
Yeah, right.
Oh yeah.
We had issues with performance for a while. I remember that.
Yeah.
Tough waters to navigate.
To answer your question, or my answer to your question is that I don't think I would change anything. I would just always remember that what we did enabled what came later. Like we blazed a lot of ground that other companies were sort of able to build from, from their platforms, offerings, etc. Our mistakes became their successes. So we have all played in some way kind of a role, in history as far as the smartphone experiences we use today. I think we should all remember that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Those
Yeah.
are all
well
good
said.
learnings. Good learnings.
Yeah, you're right.
Fantastic. Well, thanks everyone again for your time and your remembrances. And this has been a lot of fun. And let's keep going. So
Yeah.
thanks.
Thanks, Pete. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Good
All right.
stuff.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Well, that was quite an in-depth discussion with our developer panel, right?
Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
blast from the past, and kind of relearned a lot.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, people.
It's
who were in
interesting
the
when you have
trenches.
those conversations. It's like, the one memory kind of jogs another memory, and it's like, oh yeah, that's how that worked. Yeah, but
Absolutely.
But-
That's good stuff. Those are great.
definitely the
times.
Wild West back then, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it was these days it's so predetermined. It's like, here's your tool chain, here's how you put your app out. There's so much telemetry about what apps work and what don't, and the form factor is identical. And but back
Right.
then it was like kind of crazy town.
It was kind of crazy town. It was,
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of early thinking around what would become normal today.
Mhm.
Thinking around how might an app store work?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just the earliest days. Weird concepts about certificates with mobile operators. Lots of things people don't think about.
That was interesting. Yes. Who controls the store? Who controls the apps on the store? So I believe the way it worked with Qualcomm Brew on Verizon was that Verizon was in control of what apps are on the store.
Okay.
Which today sounds kind of heretical,
Yeah.
like there's an app store, an Apple, iPhone app store for Verizon and an iPhone app store for AT&T. But back
Yeah.
then that's the way it was,
Crazy.
and they took a cut of the revenue and
Yeah.
the good
Wow.
old days for telecom, I guess.
Those were the
and speaking of,
back when telecom was making money.
that's right. They still make some money, but speaking of weird concepts, there was a reference to the O phone in the conversation we just had, and I did dig up the video. So if we want to watch that, unfortunately, it's a little bit low res. So if
But it's
someone
so
out
worth
there
it.
has the original,
It's so worth it.
probably
We
copy
launched that
from
in like
VHS.
MEDC 2007, I think,
Yes.
or 2006, whatever, and that blew people away. And a lot of people believed it was real for a while.
Yeah, that's
It
true.
was funny.
Let's try it. Here we
All
go.
right.
Originality. Revolution. What do these words have in common?
People will talk about this phone the way they talk about a piece of art.
This phone breaks every paradigm that we've ever had.
They've done it. They've really done it. They've reinvented the wheel.
Introducing the Windows Mobile O phone.
When people see this phone for the first time, they'll say, "Oh."
The first time I saw this phone, I thought, oh.
I love the circular screen. Circles symbolize mobility and progress. Clocks are round, the globe is round, the wheel is round.
There you go.
Is this way up? Wait, which way is up?
This is more than thinking outside the box. We're nowhere near the box. The box is on Saturn or Jupiter, whichever's farther away.
Now, coding for the O phone is so easy, a 5-year-old can do it.
Yay,
In
Mel.
fact, even a 4-year-old can do it. All you need to do is use the right GDI APIs, such as getClientCircle instead of getClientRect, and drawCircle instead of drawLine.
I was dreaming in concentric circles at the time, and I was thinking, oh, hold on a second. I'm getting an O mail. Hey man, how you liking that new O phone? Is it cool? Yeah.
Oh, watch out for the places where you query the width and the height, because you want to query the circumference and the radius of the O phone instead.
My guys had thought they had mastered Windows Mobile, but they're always game for new challenges.
I love the keypad. This is the first phone that lets you put the numbers wherever you like. I like the number 1 down here.
The phone is a challenge, yes, but you either rise to the challenge or you throw your phone out the window. And I really like my window.
I love ringtones.
Here's a new innovation for you. Microsoft's Quick Fetch Plus. Let me show you.
There's a lot of effort went into this video.
Picture me as a pretty ballerina, and I'm in a tutu, prancing around a stage. What does that image convey? That I'm on my toes. I'm ready for anything.
To me, the O phone says expect anything. As a developer, you have to be ready. Ready for anything that comes at you. We're gonna fix that in our first ROM update.
Adapt your app.
There you go. Ta-da.
Game
There you
changer.
go. Man,
Wow.
that was a game changer, wasn't it?
That is
Yeah, a
awesome.
lot of energy went into that, but
Oh
kind
yeah.
of it makes fun of the fact that it was so these weird form factors out there.
Right.
But
Absolutely.
yeah, that was a good
It's a
one.
good way to convey.
I think
how
Ted
nice
and
it is.
Derek are both still at Microsoft, I think.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Derek's back.
Yeah, he's back at Microsoft.
He's
so
back. He was even living in Paris for a while. But yeah,
yeah,
pretty
sure.
cool.
So,
You know, back
yeah.
to the mothership.
exactly.
That's awesome.
So yeah, so I guess that brings us to the end of another epic episode.
Yeah.
Episode 2, and it's been a lot of fun. We got the next one coming up, episode 3. We have Todd Warren we're going to talk to. We're still in
Ooh.
Windows Mobile land.
Right.
Still got a little ways to go, you know.
Absolutely.
But we're really going to talk a lot about some of the breakthrough devices, especially moving on to the Trio and kind of the apex of where Windows Mobile was at.
Absolutely.
In that
Yeah.
time frame. It really was kind of shipping a lot of units, and relatively speaking, and it was pretty amazing. I guess one thing I would close with is it's fascinating. When we started, you started talking about developers, you know, and the whole
Right.
thing. You know, Microsoft just was like really owned the developer space. I mean,
Yeah.
everyone, like you said, was a Microsoft developer. Ironically, as we get into the later episodes, we'll see that the lack of apps on the platform and the lack of a coherent developer story across Windows and Windows Phone was really one of the key undoings of the business. That they were not able to really harness, because the developers that we had, as you know, were x86 Win32 developers, and
Right.
this was a totally different ballgame. And
Windows Mobile made it easy to use those same skills that they'd had from the 90s doing Win32 or early .NET WinForms. But in the future, we would keep changing that around, and it's, you know, it's prophetic. It was all about the developers, and if you lose the developers, you lose the war potentially.
There you go.
But
Steve was right.
But we don't know what's going to happen yet, so maybe we'll find out.
Oh, that's true.
Later
Yeah, we don't want
episodes.
to. Yeah, no spoilers here.
Exactly.
Who knows how it's going to end?
Who knows? Windows Phone might own the universe. I never know.
All right. Well, Rob, once again, thank you, and I'll see you on the other side.
Sounds good.